What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. You check out the content, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about why some fans think that Christie Sides was better for Caitlin Clark than Stephanie White, right? And I'm going to point out some of the differences between Christie Sides and Stephanie White. When Caitlin Clark first got to the Indiana Fever, Christie Sides she wasn't really, a big fan. It didn't seem like, because she was doing some things that people thought was counteractive to the development of Caitlin Clark, right? So, but later on, by the middle of that season, like right after the playoff games, right after the not the playoffs, but right after the All-Star game, Christie Sides kind of let Caitlin Clark, gave her the wheel and just let her do her thing, right? And then that's when you saw the team have more success, right? And so she started to let Caitlin Clark play. And so what happened was people were starting to see Caitlin Clark just coming to her own, and they were seeing that. But I think by then it was probably a little bit too late, and so they wind up letting Christie Sides go, which I thought from the very beginning that anytime a coach, most of the time when coach get these superstar basketball players, the first coach who get them, especially if there's somebody who's been around for a while and they think that they already, they know basketball, the first coach usually for some reason or another don't really survive that, that after that first couple years of with the new, with the new superstar basketball player. So I wasn't surprised that Christie Size was out of there. Now they bring in Stephanie White, and Stephanie White is somebody who has, she's had some success in the league, and she has her way of doing things. And that's where the problem comes in with Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark. I think for the last 2 years that these two have been together, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. I think that Caitlin Clark has been very patient and just kind of, hasn't done anything to kind of, disrupt or upset the apple cart and everything. But now it seems like Caitlin Clark is becoming more impatient with what's going on. Last year I don't think that Caitlin Clark was in, because she got hurt, so she wasn't in a position really to kind of like disrupt anything or speak up and something like that. But this year you're seeing that, right? Because Stephanie, it just don't seem like this lady, Stephanie White, wants to see Caitlin Clark, don't want to see her develop, or she's stunning her development. And so I think there's frustration between the two, Stephanie White and Caitlin Clark, and it's starting to boil over. And what I want to do right here is play this video. This is Jason Whitlock, right? Basically explaining what he think about the situation. And I'm gonna play this and then come back and react.
When you start out a game on an 8-2 run and Caitlin Clark is popping off and you pull her out of the game and you play 11 players in the first quarter, that's intentional sabotage. That's a coach pulling a game plan out of her rear end, trying to create tension and friction between herself and Caitlin Clark. And the next thing you know, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White are arguing on the sideline on the bench. This is an organization built for an agenda, not for doing business, not for bringing out the best in Caitlin Clark and the entire organization. This is about an agenda. All
right, so now I don't know what the agenda is, right? And another thing that I think that really kind of pissed off Caitlin Clark is they drafted Raven Johnson, right? And I think that Raven Johnson and Caitlin Clark between each other are really handling this situation as professionals. But if you see your team draft somebody at a position that you play, and Caitlin Clark has only been in the league for 3 years, and then they go out and get Raven Johnson, I think that's part of the reason too that there is some frustration there and some resentment. And let me see. And then when you go back to this little disagreement that Caitlin Clark had with Stephanie White, she actually got subbed out on that play for Raven Johnson. And so I don't see this relationship going on for too much. It's going to come to a head really soon. Um, and I think that Caitlin Clark will probably be the one who, I think she's going to opt out and don't want to, she don't want to be with this organization, because it's not just Stephanie White who is, I think really sabotaging Caitlin Clark, but also it's the organization, right? Because any other organization that has a superstar or a franchise type basketball player or baseball, football player, they're going to tell that, it's going to be known. The coach is going to know that, this person got to get on the court. This person got to get on the field. That's just the way it works. Even with, when you have a quarterback, like a quarterback that goes in the first round, the ownership want to see him out there. The fans want to see him out there. And so the coach really don't have no say-so on the matter. The coach got to put him out there, or else the coach is going to be out of a job. So that's why I think that Caitlin Clark, in my opinion, is not only upset with Stephanie White, but she's also upset with ownership and the rest of the coaching staff. We saw that Caitlin Clark, before she got into the argument with Stephanie White, she had some words with one of the coaches, so it's not just Stephanie White and the coaching staff, but also it's ownership, in my opinion, that is, like they have an agenda, which I don't understand. I spoke about, what's the young lady that's she's in Minnesota. What's her name? Olivia Miles, right? And Olivia Miles is a rookie, and she's playing for Coach what's her Reeves? I forgot the young lady. But the coach for the Minnesota Lynx is a very good coach, but she's also an old school coach, right? But she's not so old school that she don't know that when you have a rookie that is outstanding like Olivia Miles, that you just go ahead and you give her the keys, right? And you just live with the mistakes and you correct those mistakes as you go along. She's not just allowing Olivia Miles to do, go all out, but she's able to live with the mistakes that Olivia Miles is making on the court, and that's just making her team better until Fee gets back. And I would have thought that you would see the same thing from this team, right? Rookies make mistakes. Rookies have, like Caitlin Clark make mistakes, and she has everything in her game is not perfect. But a lot of fans think, and I agree, that her pluses way overshadow what her minuses are, right? And so when you just can't buy into like the great parts about somebody, and then like hate the downside. It's all one package. So if you feel like as a coach that Caitlin Clark is getting beat off the dribble, then you put her in positions where she won't be in those type of situations. That's the job of a coach, right? Is to maximize her strengths and minimize her weaknesses. And I don't see that. I see what Stephanie White is doing. She complain about her weaknesses, and at the same time, she don't do anything to maximize her strengths. And so, and I'm not even a Stephanie White, like somebody who dislikes Stephanie White. When Stephanie White was, sometimes she'd take the ball out of Caitlin Clark's hands. I thought to a certain point that was good, because you don't want to wear her out, and then at the end of the game, when you need a clutch basket, or you just want to save her or pace her for the end of the games, right? Because she's not a Jason Kidd type point guard. She's the kind of point guard who scores, and so it takes energy to score, and so you want to save her. Whereas though, like she can pass and she can score. And so, but in order to score down the stretch, you still need to have some gas in the tank. Right. And so I thought, sometimes taking the ball out of Caitlin's hands would help benefit Caitlin and the team, down the stretch. But some of the things I see Stephanie White doing, I don't know like what her motives are. And I don't know if I don't know what her motives are. And then, you see Caitlin Clark getting frustrated and stuff like that. I think that is, like I said, it's going to come to a head. It's definitely going to come to a head real soon. I don't know if Caitlin Clark is going to sign with this team. If she's going to re-sign with them when her contract is up, if she's going to be here. So yeah, that's basically my take on it. Like I said, I think that fans regret, Stephanie White. At least it seemed like, not Stephanie White, Christie Size. They regret letting Christie Size go because at least it seemed like Christie Size said, all right, by the middle of that first season, her rookie season, she said, all right, this is what's going to make us successful. So we're going to have to go out there, let her go out there and do her thing. But then once they let Christie Size go, it went right back to, like I said, just intentionally sabotaging Caitlin Clark. So that's my take on it. Make sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, man, I'm going to check y'all out in the next video. Peace.